When you think about an investment strategy for a general account like RGA's, we're part of a system. So we aren't managing it alone. And so it's very important that we think about the enterprise collaboration around the investment strategy as well. So we need to work with the actuaries and design the portfolios in the right way such that we can win business, maintain business, and also protect the balance sheet through any areas of stress. So I think about kind of three strategic pillars that we have, and then kind of a fourth strategic element as well. And so the first strategic pillar that I think about is having broad asset sourcing. So we need to be able to access as big a funnel of assets that we can invest in as a company. And so in the way the world works today, we have more things that are being financed in a bespoke and private nature. So it's really important that we have folks like our private debt and equity team under Howard Lau and the partnerships that Brian Butchko has built in our global portfolio solutions with strategic asset managers, as well as our recap real estate investment strategy. And then in addition to that we have good access to the public markets as well. So we work with all the big banks, my alma mater, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, HSBC, and we have wonderful traders and analysts who are engaging every day and have built great reputations with those sell-side counterparties. And so they look at us as a great counterparty because we have a fantastic balance sheet, we've been here for the long haul, and we'll continue to be so. So that's the first element, is having good broad asset sourcing. The second thing is all about the portfolio construction. So strategic asset allocation, asset liability management, and these are becoming even more important as we look ahead in the future when we're moving from a more formulaic look at assets in the way that the regulatory regimes used to work to now more forward-looking, more iterative and asset liability aligned way of looking at the portfolios. So it's really important that we have really good asset liability management that's driving the strategic direction, and we're optimizing for our various regulatory regimes. And then the third thing is about credit risk management, execution, really being able to operate through the cycle, picking good bonds, making sure that we're being thoughtful through the cycle as to how things could play out and that we're preparing accordingly and really building in a disciplined way. So those are the three key pillars. But I'll add one other thing that is really important. From a strategic perspective, it's important that we think about the general account as a strategic asset in and of itself to help drive enterprise value. And so we're doing that through partnerships and sidecar transactions and things of that nature where we can really get the best of both worlds in terms of highest quality, best-in-class asset management partners, but in a way that we can control and develop and build more fee-based economics for the firm. Investing well and doing good are not mutually exclusive concepts. And so the thought that ESG investing is something novel or new, I don't think is really right. I think about ESG as something that's integrated in the decision-making process of all the investments that we make. Just like any other risk premia that's out there, you can think about the ESG factors and whether or not a company is driving towards a progressive future, they're going to have better governance and better impacts on society. They may very well accrue more value into their strategies over time. And so I think it's really important that we have an integrated look at ESG as a part of the investment process, just like any other risk factor or premia that we can invest in. So I think it's really important. I've been excited that Amy Gibson on our credit research team has worked very closely with a number of folks around the enterprise to think about ESG through a broader lens. And we actually have a lot of what I would call responsible investments or impact investments in the portfolio today. So I'm really thrilled about the direction that we're headed and the way in which ESG factors play a meaningful role in the decision-making process. Well, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about private assets. I mean, private assets have become, really table stakes, and they're no longer nice to have. They're a need to have in terms of winning asset-intensive business. So it's a trend that I'm very focused on. And the important thing is, private assets are not one monolithic asset class. So people talk about private credit or something as if it's this one thing. It's a very broad-based asset class, so to speak. It may not even be an asset class. It's just a convention through which you can invest privately versus publicly. So it's a very important part of any investment strategy. It's also the kind of thing that anytime you see a market phenomenon take off in a meaningful way, you're going to see some bad actors out there. You're going to see individuals and institutions perhaps that don't understand exactly what they're investing in, or perhaps are more focused on gathering assets than actually managing assets. And so I think we're going to continue to see headlines around private markets. private credit, private assets, however you want to deem that. And I think importantly for an institution like ours, it's an opportunity to differentiate ourselves because we have wonderful access to private assets and we underwrite them for the benefit of our balance sheet and for the promises that we're making for the long term. And over time, like Warren Buffett says, when the tide goes out, you see who's wearing a bathing suit. So I think over time, it's going to be something that's going to play out very well for RGA, especially relative to some of our competitors that are perhaps been a little bit more aggressive in terms of that asset gathering, as opposed to being real stewards of the capital. I consider myself a real student of leadership. It's something that I care deeply about. I don't think that any strategy can scale without alignment. And no strategy can then succeed without empowerment. And so I ascribe to a pretty simple philosophy, just taking a step back about the way I think about leadership, and that's the 3 C's. I focus on character, courage, and connection. And to me, that means character is what you start with. Your trust, your integrity, how you show up, the relationships that you're able to build all come from your ability to have a good basis of character. Second is courage, having the ability to make the tough decisions when those decisions need to be made or may very well be unpopular. And then the third thing is connection, because no one can succeed on their own. It's about building relationships. So that's my fundamental philosophy in the way that I think about life and my family and work and everything I do. And so I translate that into a simple acronym that I use with my teams, ACE. And ACE just stands for align, communicate, and empower. And that's the way that I think about leadership, is that we need to have good alignment, have the knowledge of where we're headed, and spend the time together as a leadership team and as a broader enterprise to understand what are our North Star objectives, how are we going to achieve them, and getting that alignment, not just agreement, but actual alignment. The second thing is communication. So making sure that we're having candid conversations, kind of up, down, sideways. Everyone is aware of the information. Information is shared openly and honestly. So that's the C. And then the E is empowerment, because once you have that alignment and you're communicating well, it's all about empowerment. And you can empower your teams to go and execute on the objectives that you have. And from my experience, that empowerment is inspiring. And it's something that I'm very focused on, and I'm really looking forward to working with the team. Good investment performance is a lagging indicator of good culture. And so that's the lesson that I learned early on, is understanding that culture really matters, and having the ability to have candid dialogue with your teams, to be open and honest and trustworthy. It gets you to a better place and having richer conversations and making the best decisions. And so if you're making the best decisions by virtue of that, your performance is going to be even stronger. So that's the thing that I've really been focused on throughout my career. The book that's had a big influence on me is The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. I think a lot of his leadership philosophies are things in which I'm quite aligned, and they've really impacted my leadership and general philosophy towards culture and in the corporate workplace. Gotta be dogs. My little dog Moose is the family favorite. City. My wife's spaghetti meatballs. How about artists? Noah Kahn, Zach Bryan, and I suppose if I'm driving my kids around to sports, it's probably some 80s or 90s rap song to hype them up. Definitely Waze. I drive my kids all over the place, and I seem to never know where we need to be. I prefer to be a night owl, or I used to think I was, but I seem to be falling asleep earlier and earlier every year. Coffee, black. Both. Nonfiction. Italy. We did a family vacation, the 7 of us last year, and it was wonderful. My kids. Love talking about my kids. The thing that I'm big into stand-up comedy. Any like Nate Bargatze comedy shows on HBO or Netflix always get me.